welcome to Monday Night Live. My name is Brendan Malone, and in this episode, we're going to be speaking to Pete Espil. Before I introduce Pete, though, let me just say a huge thank you to all of our supporters at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. You guys are awesome, and it's thanks to you that this episode was made possible. If you're not already a member of our Patreon community, you can join us right now for as little as $1 a month or as much as you'd like to contribute at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. That's patreon.com/leftfootmedia. Not only will you be helping to ensure that more of this great content keeps getting made, but you'll also receive exclusives that are only available to our patron supporters. Right, with that out of the way, back to our guest. Jean-Pierre Pete Espil, or Pete Espil, has worked with youth and young adults for over 25 years in a variety of settings, including group homes, alternative schools, detention centres, and treatment facilities. He spent 13 years in full-time ministry for the Catholic Church. As well as being the author of 3 books, he has also travelled extensively as a motivational and religious speaker. Pete served in the United States Marine Corps after high school and received his bachelor degree in linguistics from Boise State University and his master's in social work from Utah State University. He is currently a licensed clinical social worker and works as a counsellor at a local agency in his hometown in Idaho. When he isn't working, Pete enjoys hunting and trapping in the great outdoors, practicing martial arts, and spending time with his lovely wife and their rescued dogs. So without any further ado, let's have this fascinating conversation with Pete Espil about God, guns, and grace in the United States of America. Pete, thanks so much for being with us here today to have this conversation, which I have titled God, Guns and Grace in the USA. So let's start and finish by bookending our conversation at both ends with grace, because, could it be anything more important, really? So let's start the grace part of the conversation. Give us a little bit about your background, because you're a guy who's got... You've got an amazing history, someone who has struggled and grappled with alcohol issues. You've been a former Mormon. You've been in the Marines. Now you're a Christian who is working as a clinical social worker. There's a lot packed in there. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Peter.
Well, I try to get the most out of life. And I think, I don't know, there's a lot packed in there, but I don't even know where I would start. I live in the northwestern United States, in Idaho, and Idaho is one of the only probably 3 places I would still live in the United States. It's a pretty independent state, and I was born and raised here. My family is really fascinating. On both sides of my family, my ancestors helped settle the American West. So,
wow.
Yeah, so like my mom, her ancestors came across the United States with Brigham Young to settle Salt Lake City. And my dad's ancestors came over in the around late 1800s, and they were Basque. They were from southern France, and they came over as sheep herders, and they were involved in the sheep and cattle wars and all that stuff. And so, they had exciting lives, and I've always wanted to have, a life like my ancestors did. I don't fit in well to something that has to just kind of be the same all the time.
Yeah.
So as much as I love Benedictine spirituality, I could never be a Benedictine.
It's funny. I want to ask you about that point, because I think this is fascinating, because I often feel that pull myself. And I think in the work that I do, I'm often mentoring men, is I think a lot of young men, they're sort of caught in that trap. They look back to perhaps how their grandparents and even their ancestors lived. And though they wouldn't trade the lack of, I guess, modern technology and advancements we've got that are positive, they also recognise something's been lost in there a little bit, right? Our connection with the world, our sense of meaning, a lot of that sort of is not what it should be, right?
I agree 100%. And a lot of them don't know what's missing. They know they're not happy, but they don't know what's missing. And when you don't have anything to work for, why would you be fulfilled? Yeah. There's a reason that work is part of Catholic social teaching. Viktor Frankl, I'm a big fan of Frankl, and he talks about man was not built for a tensionless state. Man was built to strive for something, to work for something. And that's kind of the how I've tried to live my life. And I went in the Marine Corps at 17, and when I got out of the Marine Corps, I started working with teenagers, which is dangerous too. But I spent 20, I think it's my 25th year working with youth and young adults. But yeah, I like you said, I was in the Marines. I converted from the Mormon Church to the Catholic Church. I spend a lot of time doing stuff that probably a lot of guys around my age don't do. I still do martial arts. I used to compete in boxing. I spend a lot of time on my days off out in the mountains and the deserts, miles and miles from anywhere. And if I could stay there, I probably would. But I think God wants me to do some other stuff too than just become a mountain man. But I went back
I know what that feels like, mate. I often say that when I'm out speaking at events. I say to people, look, if I had my way, like if I'm honest about it, I would be totally unknown. No one would be watching this conversation right now online because I wouldn't be there. No one would know me. I'd have my wife, my kids. I'd have a farm somewhere where a bit of land where we could go hunting in the hills, do a bit of farming, and just live a good life, raising a family and quiet. But obviously, God has other plans. So,
Yeah, yeah. There was a job posting for a for a government trapper down in Nevada, where my family still has ranches in Nevada. In fact, we still have the original ranch that the Espil family founded in the late 1800s. So
wow.
I try to go down there sometimes to hunt and stuff. But anyway, there's this job opening for a government trapper in Nevada. And I was like, hey, Jamie, do you think maybe? She's like, no, that is not what God put you on this earth for. And I'm like, I know, but it would be fun. But anyway, yeah, I've squeezed a lot in, and I feel like I've got a lot more to squeeze in. And I don't think about things like retiring or I just don't think about stuff like that. I just feel like, life's a gift, and you got to figure out how to use the time that God gives you for his purpose. And that doesn't mean you can't have some fun along the way, but this isn't about how do I get everything I can for myself out of this life, because you can't take any of that with you except faith, hope, and love. So I just, how much more can I squeeze in with the time I've got left, whatever that is.
Oh, that's beautiful, mate. Let's talk a little bit about the Marine Corps, because, it's something that you obviously is a big part of your life. And if I understand things correctly, Marine culture carries a great significance in the US, and it's not something that leaves you even when you leave the Corps, right? It's the whole Semper Fi, the whole thing, it's very much, it remains in your blood, right? Once you've been a Marine, you're sort of always a Marine in a sense.
Yeah, and that's good and bad.
Yeah.
Really, it is. I was not in the Marine Corps for very long. I never got to see combat. I was in the infantry. I served overseas, but I didn't get to see combat, and I was given an opportunity to leave earlier than what I had planned on, which was it's a long story. I don't really want to go into, but I had originally gone into the Marine Corps with the plan to retire from the Marine Corps. And it's funny how things don't work out the way you plan them to. And so I got out of the Marine Corps after a few years. I was honorably discharged, but so there was nothing bad about it. But yeah, the Marine mentality, the best gift that the Marines, I think, gave me was that you just don't quit. I mean, if you keep going and keep going hard, eventually whatever's in front of you will crumble. And that's, that kind of tenacity is hard to, it's kind of hard to teach people outside of certain specific environments.
Yeah.
And I think the Marine Corps is one of those environments that teaches that kind of tenacity. And so that's a really good thing. It's also, it can be a real weakness too, because you tend to run over people, you tend to, when you get your mind on something, you grab a hold of it and you'll keep going even after your efforts maybe have proven to be maybe not be successful. And so there's times in my life where I've had to go, Pete, you gotta just stop. This isn't, you can't make, no amount of continuing this is going to make this happen, or you're not going to win this one. You're not going to win. Um, and, and so, one of the battles I've had has just been to learn to be able to go, I can step away. I can let that go. I can change my goal. Maybe I'm not going to be able to get what I wanted here, but I can alter my goal a little bit and maybe get something close. So, so it could be a good and a bad thing, you know.
While we're talking about the military, there's obviously been a huge development in world affairs in the last week or so with, I guess I'd call it the fall of Afghanistan. And there's very much a media presented version that we see a lot of today. But tell us, how do you think your average, ordinary, everyday American on the streets is receiving and looking at that situation from their perspective?
I don't know. I think that the media is representative of the average person, and that's I'm saying that in a negative kind of way, because I don't. The media is very does a very poor job a lot of times of presenting what's going on, and I think that sometimes it's on accident or just because of lack of information, but I think other times it's very much um, on purpose because it's so politically driven. Everything in the United States has become political. Everything, and I don't have a whole lot of patience for that. I've never had patience for politics. I just I don't understand why we pay people so much money who really don't do much except restrict freedom. Um,
Preach it, brother. Preach it.
yeah, so I just I mean like our current president, I mean he's never done anything. He hasn't done anything. He's been a career politician. He's never had to accomplish anything. Yeah, he's had some people die that were close to him, but haven't we all? Well, congratulations. Here's your participation trophy. I don't care. We all have people die. That's the point. We all die in this life. It doesn't. But I just don't. But getting back to your point on the media, um, I think there's a lot of posturing in the media, and I think the media has learned that if they can shock people or surprise people, they'll do it. And then the rank and file folks on the street have figured out that if they can find some angle to get heard, then they'll do it. And then we get a lot of posturing. So there have been a few people associated with the military, former military, whatever, who are speaking out and saying things like, this is really hurts. This really hurts because I had friends that died there and stuff like that, and you see the media cover that stuff, and it's a lot. To me, it's a lot of posturing. I have a friend that was in Afghanistan early, and he was in one of the most elite units that you can get into in the military. And I don't want to say too much because I just about what
Sure.
but he's like this. He texted me and he was just like, "This is so stupid." He goes, "What are these vets that are talking? What are they talking about?" He goes, "We went over there to kill people."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "That's what we went over there to do. End of story." You know, and we've been killing people for 20 years, and now we're out of money, so they're bringing them home. And he's like, these people who are making it into some kind of big, social narrative. I think it's all politically driven. I don't, and I'm not trying to be mean, or I'm just reality is that, we've been there. The idea that we were going to change a culture that's been established for centuries, in a few years, that's not going to happen. That we study history. Where has that ever happened?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, go all the way back into the Old Testament. It doesn't happen. So I don't know where some of these people who think that we're in some grand noble mission are getting their. I'm not sure what world they live in, and I also and again, I'm not a military correspondent. I got out of the Marines in 1994. So I'm not in the loop per se, but I am in the loop with a lot of vets, and they all feel the same way. They're just like, they're pretty disenfranchised with our leaders. They're very much connected to their units and to their brothers in arms and sisters in arms and stuff. But as far as believing that we were on some noble mission to change Afghanistan, we were there. They say the same thing. We were there to kill people, and it did keep some terrorism at bay for a while. But at what cost? I mean, billions and billions of dollars to keep a presence there. It's not gonna last. It just happened that we pulled out now. You know, I don't think Biden has the first clue as to how to be a commander in chief. And I think a monkey, with some crayons could have come up with a better exit strategy. But I mean, that's the circle of vets and people that I operate in. That pretty much reflects their feelings on it as well. And these are vets, recent vets, not like me, who's been out forever. But I mean, these are guys that some of them served over there, and and they're just like, I don't know what all the hoopla's about. It was a terrible way to get out, but
yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think often there's a sort of a jingoism and a false patriotism that's bred by the people who never actually had to see a theatre of war. Because when you read the accounts, and I've read quite a few accounts, both recent and more historical accounts of men who served and led in wars, and it's awful. It's just horrific. I'm grateful I've been spared that.
Yeah, nobody wants to, I mean, I shouldn't say nobody wants to go to war, because when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, I wanted to go to war. But my priorities have changed, but I mean, like, I think you nailed something there with the jingoism and stuff. This is if any of my friends, some of my friends might watch this and it might tick them off a little bit, but I have a lot of friends and I run in a lot of really kind of libertarian circles with people, and a lot of them like to they grab a hold of that patriot narrative, and it's like, I would do anything for this country. I would do anything to protect my freedoms. And then I'm like, really? What branch of the military did you serve in? And it's like, oh, well, I didn't do that, and it's like, well, I get what you're saying, but don't say you'd do anything, because you never signed on a line with a check payable up to your life,
Yeah, so true. You guys, it's fascinating looking at this, because you've just come through the Trump era. It's a very short era, really, but it feels like it's been forever because of the obsession in the media with it. But you're in a two-party system, but you're a third-party guy, right? You're not in either of the camps, sort of thing. You straddle the fence a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, I'm not really. I'm not a Democrat. I would have to put my brain away. I'm not a Republican, because I don't agree with, I tend to agree more with the right, just because they're still a little less restrictive on freedoms, but at the cost of, the poor. I mean, at the cost of protecting the interests of the most wealthy a lot of times. And I don't think it always comes off as that's the intention, but and I'm not saying that's necessarily always a bad thing. And I'm not dissing on my Republican friends either, because most of my extended family is Republican, because they do better on their ranches and stuff when a Republican's in office.
Yeah.
But I don't see much consistency in either party. And if there's one thing about me, I try to be really consistent with my own morality and my own ethics. And the only thing I can come to that makes sense as a political filter is, are we limiting the amount of power that the government has? Because the more power a government has, the more damage it can do, and so I would be willing to, say, well, yeah, if in a libertarian world, there's not going to be programs for the poor, but we're going to be paying very fewer taxes, and people are going to be able to do more community-based things and things like that. And my money would be more in my control to make decisions about what I do with my money. and I would have more freedoms, in society to make decisions that are best for me and my world. I might have to stomach some side effects that I don't like, but increasing people's freedom to make their own decisions for their life is, in my opinion, and I would even say in the opinion of Catholic social teaching, at least a neutral thing. It's certainly not a bad thing or an evil thing. Now, would there be some side effects from that we don't like? Sure. But man, I just feel like the more the government gets power to control our lives, and to decide what to do with the taxes we pay them and everything else, the more damage it can do. I mean, I think the government that is like amoral is like the best you can shoot for in a pluralistic society. But a government is a terrible guardian of morality. Governments are terrible guardians of morality. I've never seen, I can't find an example in history where a government did a good job of guarding morality, including when we had a Holy Roman Emperor. I mean, I don't, even when the church was in charge of government, they didn't do a very good job.
Yeah, heads were still getting cracked, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, how about we just let people figure out what they want to do, and obviously we need government for some stuff. I'm not an anarchist, but yeah, I fall way more in the camp of, how does this translate to more freedom for me to make the right decisions?
What was it like then, on the ground? I mean, really like, under Trump? Because it seems to me there's like a public thing where you see both sides at war with each other, the pro and the anti-Trump. But I also get the sense, talking to people behind the scenes, there was a private, ordinary, every man who had a very different take on the whole thing. What do you think it was like on the ground under Trump?
I mean, in Idaho, which is a red state, a Republican state, for the most part, it was just business as usual. I mean, people would be like, what are they getting so upset about? I don't know, I mean, you have your few, Idaho's got some populations of Democrats, but they're not, I don't know. It's not as, they don't have a ton of influence, I mean, maybe a third of the votes every election go to Democrat candidates in Idaho, other than in a couple specific places in Idaho. But for the most part, down here in rural southern Idaho where I live, it was just kind of business as usual. I don't think a whole lot changed. There was some funny things that happened, and I mean, I say they're funny. I'm probably might lose my social work card over this, but we got like Boise, Idaho, our capital city, that they decided to have a pro, I can't remember what it was called, pro Black Lives Matter rally, or pro justice rally, or I don't know, something. Well, we don't, like, I'm not saying we never have racial problems in Idaho, but like in Boise, Idaho, I mean, this is not like a hot button topic. I mean, the police department's pretty solid up there, and it's still relatively, we don't deal with the same kinds of stuff other people deal with. But these people wanted to have this rally, and so to raise hell about something that wasn't an issue. And again, I know if there's injustice somewhere, then it can affect anywhere, but I'm just like, there's a lot of different ways they could have done it. They chose to stand outside of City Hall and scream and holler. And of course, the far right, who I laugh at as much as I do the far left, they mobilized the troops, man. They've been planning for this their whole life, So they're walking the streets with their AR-15s and their gun, and they're up there and they're cheering for the cops, which is always funny to me, because true libertarians or true far right would want a really small police force, but when the cops are coming to give a problem to the liberal protesters, then all the far right's all pro police, Anyway, so there's this big clash up there, and then one of my friends that I know, who's really far left, was like, well, one of those Nazis, those right-wing Nazis punched one of the liberal protesters for no reason. Well, then when you see the video, like this lady's like in this guy's face and just shoving at him and pushing him and spitting on him, so he pops her. That was kind of funny for Idaho, I mean, you don't see stuff like that in Idaho, but I I don't know. I just kind of did my job and didn't worry a whole lot about it. People who get so upset over the results of an election, especially Christians, always make me laugh because I'm like, all this stuff is supposed to happen.
Mm.
Like I don't. It doesn't. Why are we acting like this guy's a prophet? I mean, I could see somebody voting for Trump, but I can't imagine an evangelical Christian defending his actions. I could see one defending his policies,
Yeah.
but not his personality. But that was happening, and
Well, it
and
was
I,
fun. It was fun. It was funny, wasn't it? That was an issue for me that struck me as odd. Is people on both sides often. Well, to be fair, I think more on the left. There were even, and particularly in Christian circles, they couldn't sort of differentiate between the fact that you might hold your nose and vote for the best of two bad options versus you were then giving a ringing endorsement and everything that this guy did, or you worship the ground that he walked on. That's not how we vote. Well, I wouldn't have thought
yeah,
so.
and it's true. I think you're dead on right there that the right seems to do a better job of being able to go, well, I don't like either of these, but I think that the policies that this person's going to enact are going to be better for the country than the policies that this person is going to act, even if this person's kind of a dirtbag, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But the left, when they now I'm generalizing. I can't, not all the time, but I think that a lot of times the left will be the first to attack, the morality or whatever of candidate on the right, but ignore their own, inconsistency and hypocrisy, in their own candidate. So we've got to.
What is that? Do you think that, I guess that's the frailty of human nature, right? But social media probably amplifies that problem where we just, we're in such a bubble. We don't think we're culpable of doing that. We think the other guy has got blind spots, but we don't recognize our own, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's been a lot written on that. I'm sure And I mean, there's a bunch of authors have written whole books about that. And it's just if it agrees with my team, then I'll stomach the bad stuff. But if it's not my team, then I won't tolerate anything.
Yeah.
And we don't have we've lost the ability to have any kind of reason to discourse. I mean, it's meme warfare, and
yeah.
and half the stuff that's being posted on memes isn't true, and stuff on social media. And so I kind of I kind of just don't post a whole lot of political stuff myself. One, I don't think it changes anybody's mind, and two, it seems to cause problems. And I don't enjoy fighting with people or arguing with people because most people don't know how to have any kind of discourse about something. No.
Yeah, that's a good point. I look, it's probably one of my struggles. There's probably too much of a drunken Irishman in me still, and I like every now and then, but I try to do it in a way that's trying to present very clearly what my position is, trying to be as non-partisan as I can, just pointing to the moral principles. But I just know some issues. You just know I'm inviting a ravenous pack here. It's going to be a mob. I know if I'm going to post, I've got to accept that I'm walking into that.
Yeah, and I think that one, I don't think there's ever too much drunk Irishman in anyone. Two,
quote of the week.
Yeah, I think you have a different role. I mean, in your job, I mean, it's something you have to do, and so where I'm a counselor, and I mean, my Facebook's pretty private, but I got to be a little careful about posting stuff just because who knows who might see it, and even though I think it's funny, it might hurt my possibility of helping a client somewhere down the road. But also I just think that I don't like where you're in the public eye more and you're bringing awareness to issues. I think that's part of what you have to do. Where it's me, I don't care. I don't care to engage with somebody for days on end about some snippet of social policy I posted. It's just like, well, whatever, man. If that's what whatever.
Can I tell you? I had a really beautiful experience a couple of days ago, actually. a young lady I know who's on the opposite political spectrum to what I am. We've known each other for a few years, but she out of the blue contacted me a couple of days ago, and she said, "Look, she said, I often find myself frustrated with your social media posts because she's very different political to me, but view to me." She said, how would you feel if because she likes reading a lot as well. I read a lot of books and she likes to read a lot as well. And she said, how would you feel if we did a book exchange, a couple of books each? So I recommend my lefty authors, you recommend your conservative authors to me, and I'll read yours, you read mine. And I was like, yes, absolutely, in a heartbeat. And she was sort of really hesitant, like I was going to say no, but I was like, look, this is great. And I think, like, to me, that was a really beautiful moment, because we don't see enough of that, right? There's that genuine friendship between people. It's now, like you say, everything's political first and the person comes second to everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm guilty of that. As much as I like to think I'm not, there's lots of times that I'll say things that I really did just like label a whole group of people. And it's really not fair, because I have a lot of liberal friends who are not stupid. I mean, they're smart guys. They see the role of government differently than I do,
Yeah.
And, I say 100 times a day, that's not the government's job. That's not the government's job. That's not the government's job, but in their minds, it's like, no, I think if we have the ability to do something about this, we should, and we should spend money on it. And so it's not always that one side isn't thinking or anything. It's a lot of times it's just different core values. It's like, well, my core values start with freedom, and other people's core values start with other things. And so,
yeah, good point.
What do you do? I think you're at an impasse a lot of times.
Speaking of freedoms, this has been a big contentious point of debate, really, and I think this is one area where I'd love to get your thoughts on under Trump, was the whole COVID-19 crisis. And if you looked at just the media version of events we get here in New Zealand, you would think that it was disorganised, deadly mayhem and madness with Trump as the lunatic king on the throne, just burning the empire down as it all unfolded. But what was it actually like? What's COVID like on the ground? It's because you got hit harder than we did.
Yeah, this is one of those things that if we start with a principle, right, that like a core value for me is freedom. So I'm willing to sacrifice, possibly my life, if it means preventing, any entity from getting our country into some kind of an iron grip. You know what I mean? And a lot of people feel that way. It doesn't mean that they thought it was fake or, there's the ones that think that it was invented, or that it was invented on purpose and dumped in America to kill all the old people or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories, but
sure.
But a lot of the folks I know were just like, look, I'm trying to do what I can to be careful, but I don't think we should shut down an entire national economy over it, right? And so, there was that feeling. In Idaho, again, we're such a rural state for the most part. We had a huge outbreak of it in Sun Valley, which was because there was some kind of a gathering there for skiing, and there were like 1,000 people that flew in for this thing, and then it turned out that COVID spread massive at that. So we had this kind of deal happen, and we had full hospitals for a while. They're full again right now with this variant, and I had a friend die from COVID. So I mean, it's a real thing. As far as what it was like on the ground, I think that there was a lot of inconsistency, and it's easy to get mad about inconsistency because you want the leaders to make decisions, but sometimes we judge the leaders as if they somehow know all the facts, and sometimes they don't, and that's one of the reasons why, again, I think government should be smaller, so when they make poor decisions, it doesn't affect as many people. But I don't think we had good information, and I am critical of Trump on how he handled this. When you don't know, it's best to keep your mouth shut. Don't make stuff up. And the best thing that Trump could have done is said, look, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and here are some doctors to say what they think. And I'd like governors to make the best decisions they can based on the information we have for the people in their states. and then let the states make their own decisions about COVID, but that's not what Trump did, I mean, it'll just disappear, and well, it's not that big of a deal, and then, well, it is a big deal. And then you got the guidance from the CDC. Masks work, masks don't work. 2 masks work. It was just, and it's always better as a leader if you don't know, say, look, we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But here's what we think. And here's what the best research we've been able to done up to this point says. So, state leaders, do what you will with this information,
Well, I think that requires humility, though. And I think we've crafted a model of leadership. Once we abandoned that Judeo-Christian sacred order, which saw the government as not being the highest authority in the land, but there was a higher authority still that it should be accountable to, then we've now looked to, I think, our leaders as saviors, and that's bred within them a sort of narcissism and a sort of messiah complex, and humility does not go hand in hand. And you struggle to say, okay, guys, we don't know what's going on, because you think, no, well, I won't get re-elected if I don't look like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's a very insightful comment. I would agree with that. I think that we have a lot of leaders who have lost the virtue of humility and the ability to say, I'm not sure. I don't know. Here's what we do know, but there's a lot we don't know. And then there's a lot of, and I'm not a misogynist. You can ask my wife. She loves me. I'm a good guy. But I think that we have more women in power now, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but women, I think, generally are sort of pre-programmed to protect everybody. And so I always make these jokes with my parents that when I get parents in with teenagers for counseling and stuff like that, if you have a mom and a dad on the playground watching their little kid play on the equipment, and he gets kind of in a tight spot, what does dad do? Dad's like, oh, let's see if he can figure this out, and mom's like, oh, we got to go save him,
Yeah.
And dad's like, just hold on. Let's see how he does. We'll go if he needs it, but let's see if he can do this. And so I think that there's just kind of a gut jerk reaction pre-programmed in women for good reason to just want to protect everybody at any cost. And where guys are more of, I don't know, got to die of something. Let's figure this out, And I think that influences it a little bit. I really do. I don't think it's the whole driving factor behind everything, but I think that has an impact. I think if you look at states where you have female governors, I think in a lot of cases more was done, but there's also population density issues, there's
it's complex, right? It's complex, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think the leaders could have handled it better. They could have been far more honest and more consistent in their information. And I believe a fish stinks from the head down, and I don't think Trump handled it very well.
Look, yeah, I think that's a good summation. You've already, as you said to us, freedom is a really important aspect of how you look at, your political philosophy. Right now in America, it seems, and really around the same time of COVID, there were 2 fires burning at once, or lots of fires burning, really. And that was the whole Black Lives Matter, the social justice, I say, quote unquote, because I think social justice now has been so corrupted in the secular sense away from what the authentic Christian understanding of that original, because it's a doctrine that comes from Christianity originally. But it's now been so corrupted that I use quote marks regularly to describe it. But all of that kicked off. Are you worried about where and sort of at this moment in the life of America, are you worried about which way things could tip?
Yeah, I don't worry. I always talk about worry with my clients. Worry is a choice. And I don't think worrying affects outcomes a whole lot. I think action can affect outcomes, but I look at what's going on, and I find it really interesting that most people who say social justice don't understand what it means, even the people who make fun of it. And I also think that it has become corrupted in a lot of ways. Like we've got, I'll give you an example. I was a member of the National Rifle Association, and I was a member of the National Association of Social Workers. Very disparate groups.
Yeah.
I did not renew my membership in either of those this last year because both of them were so inconsistent in their public face and their public persona. I did not see a single press release from the National Association of Social Workers that condemned the violence being perpetrated by so-called protesters who were burning down people's businesses. You know, they were hurting people. They were, I didn't see anything about that, but I saw plenty of releases about the violence from police departments.
Yeah.
By the same token, I didn't see anything from the NRA about the riot at the riot, at the Capitol.
Yeah.
But I saw lots about, arm yourself in case these protests come to your town. And so when we get to that point, then I don't think there's anywhere to go but up. We're already about as low as we can get. If we write our own morality and our emotions are driving our morality, then there is no morality. It's just whatever we feel to be true is true. And like I say to my clients all the time, I say, just because it feels true doesn't make it true.
Yeah. Yeah. Good
You
point.
can feel it's true all day long, but it doesn't matter, and so, but that's where we're at in this, the emperor has a lot of new clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over here, and I'm supposed to just be able to keep up with all that. And that's because somebody thinks I should. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to throw away logic and my common sense and my ability to evaluate things objectively by looking at them because your feelings might get hurt.
We talked a bit about grace. We talked a bit about God and lots of politics. I couldn't figure out a G word for politics. But let's talk about guns. Gun culture in the USA. It's something that I think other countries just don't understand. They don't really get the Second Amendment. I really don't think you see it here in New Zealand. A lot of people look with sort of arrogance at the Second Amendment. They don't understand it. They don't understand, I think, constitutional government here. That's part of the problem. But it is, it's something that's personal to you. You enjoy your hunting and your firearms, and I'm also a firearm owner here in New Zealand who doesn't get out as much as he'd like to, but enjoys, and I, especially with my boy now, being able to sort of pass on some skills to him. There's something really good about that. But it seems to me that a lot of people just really don't understand the Second Amendment culture and gun culture in America, and it's sort of this very there is a picture painted in the worst extremes, right, of what American gun culture is, but it's really it's a bit mixed bag, right? And for the most part, it's not really what American gun culture is.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Brendan. Is that you have to define the culture, and gun culture changes depending on what part of America you're in, and sometimes even on the neighborhood. So in Idaho, when we talk about gun culture in Idaho. We're talking about, I grew up around guns. There were guns in our house, in my bedroom. My room was in the basement. The closet in the basement is where all our guns were. Several of them were loaded. People came to our house. There were guns. Nobody freaked out. We took our guns to school. We'd throw them all in somebody's truck. And then after football practice, we'd run out and try to shoot some pheasants. My first speech in college in 1994, I think, was how to take apart and reassemble an AR-15.
Yeah, awesome.
Out of college.
Yeah.
And so in Idaho, we hunt, we shoot, people recreate with guns. Most people still, I would say, the majority of people in Idaho at least own a gun. Even one of my friends who's she's really cool. She's way left, but she's awesome. And, she has guns. And, it's just kind of like, yeah, we have guns, and it's, nobody thinks much about it. Police don't think about it. I've been pulled over several times, when I've been in a hurry to get somewhere out to check my trap line or something. And I'll have a shotgun or something laying on the seat, and the officer will come up. Oh, what you going out to shoot? I said, oh, looking for pheasants. Okay, it's just not a big deal. But gun culture is different if you're talking about something like, Eastern Los Angeles, downtown Detroit, but even like when I use Detroit or something as an example, people are quick to point out that just 3 or 4 hours away from that, there's a different gun culture.
Yeah.
And so it's a really hard subject because, again, you're going to get both sides talking past each other. You're going to get the left when they talk about the gun problem. In their minds, they see, whatever. They see the gang violence. And most firearm deaths in America are from a handgun. And a large number of them are gang related. So, they see that, or they see a mass shooting or something like that. To the right, you come to Idaho and say, you guys can't have your guns. That's not going to go over very well. In fact, it would instantly make a large portion of Idahoans felons because they're not going to go turn anything in. I'm not turning anything in,
Can I ask, because it seems to me, from an outsider's perspective, people look at that, I think, rather condescendingly and say, oh, that's because they've just got this rebellious streak in them. But in actual fact, your history, right, in America is one of a country that's had to fight for freedoms and to protect those freedoms. And there's an innate understanding that an unarmed populace is vulnerable to those who might want to exert some sort of tyranny, right? So it's not just random rebellion and lawlessness.
And that's just it, is that there's a lot of reasons for why the Second Amendment is so important to so many Americans. And part of it is our history. And yeah, we are rebellious. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Mate, the drunken Irishman in me goes, yes, yeah, you rebelled against England as well.
I'd rather be a rebel than a robot,
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's that. And then if you don't understand constitutional governance, then it's going to be really hard to understand something like the Second Amendment. But if you look at the amendments, especially the first 10, they guarantee a whole bunch of rights that cannot be taken away. And they don't just include guns. It includes things like the freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble, the freedom of religion, the freedom to against being tried without a jury. There's all kinds of freedoms in those 10 amendments that we could do an entire show on. And when you take one of them out, it sort of upsets the balance of them, because it's not going to work as well. There's no longer any kind of a balance of power, even though that balance of power is getting smaller and smaller. Having firearms is still a certain amount of power to people who may not be as strong. And if you look at it logically, like, let's just kind of look at it in a vacuum, which I know we don't exist in a vacuum, but if you take away the right for someone to bear arms, then the default setting is that the biggest and strongest people have the power.
Yeah. We've got that. So we've got a version of this happening in New Zealand right now. So we had that terrorist attack at the mosque, and it was just horrific. One of the worst things we've ever seen in our very small, isolated country. And our government then moved very quickly to ban semi-automatic centerfire rifles. And so, I lost one, and they had a gun buyback. We had to give back guns. But here's what happened. So everyone who was a genuinely good Kiwi and a law-abiding citizen, they gave back their guns, they got money in return, and they said, okay, well, a lot of us said this sucks, but if this is what's going to keep us safer, and they're not going to take everything, we'll accept that. But then what happened? The gangs, we got a big gang problem in New Zealand, and motorbike gangs, and the police literally said, it was very public, it was in the papers, and they had conversations with them. Right, time for you to hand over your guns, and they said no, we're not doing that. And now we have in our country, there's open gang warfare playing out on our streets. Like bikie gangs with shootings on it. Like almost every other day you'll read about a shooting in the paper. So basically, all the good law-abiding citizens, they don't have any guns. The gangs have guns. They haven't given them back. They've got lots of semi-autos, and they're fighting each other on the street with them. And it's like, well, how did that really make New Zealand that much safer?
It doesn't. And like I've said many times, if I believed that giving up my guns would make bad people stop doing bad things, I might consider it. I probably still wouldn't do it, but I might consider it. But, I think it's Ben Franklin said that those who would substitute freedom for safety deserve neither.
Yeah, yeah.
And the bad guys aren't going to stop being bad guys, and the bad guys aren't going to give you their guns.
No.
All that gun control does is take away weapons from people who follow the laws. And in America, and we're a different country than New Zealand, but in America, if they said you got to give your guns up, most gun owners will not do it. They'll just say no, come take them.
One of the things I really appreciate about this from a firearm owner perspective in New Zealand is the sort of the hunting and the outdoor skills and the very practical, corporeal, hands-on skills. One of the most joyful moments I've had in the last couple of years was watching my young son when I sat with him at a range and him learning loading and firing a Ruger 1022 and him. The joy in him when he realized, if I sight this thing properly, I can hit the steel target, and then him just continually getting sort of 70% of his shots, 80% on target, 60 meters, 100 meters. It's a beautiful thing. And in many ways, I think what we're living in right now, you see this like with the COVID crisis and everything else, we live in a very, very badly constructed artificial bubble. It's very urbanized. We're not really connected with the hunter-gatherer type stuff. We don't know how to do that well. I look at your wall behind you. That's one of your pelts, right? That you have trapped or you've shot yourself.
That's a mountain lion behind me there. I shot him.
That's awesome, right? That means something that has tangible meaning. It's a skill you have in a time of crisis. You can care for those around you and those who might need you, those you love, and your neighbours, etc. But it seems that a big part of that gets lost with the whole guns aren't just about gangs and mass shootings. There's also a really good and positive angle to all of this that gets lost in that.
So I can hunt with my guns. I can protect myself with my guns. I can protect my family with my guns. I can protect against my government with my guns. I can protect against somebody else's government with my guns. I could use my guns to get food for me and my family if something went wrong. All this concern about stuff that what could happen, power grids going down, all that stuff. I'm like, I don't care. I'm as happy camping as I am doing anything else. I know how to get food. I know how to find food. I know how to trap animals and hunt animals and fish and plant certain things. And I know what plants are edible. And I'm not really worried. I know how to purify water. It would suck, but it wouldn't be as comfortable as our life is now, but it might be better.
Early settler Pete would love it.
Yeah, I'd be all right, but yeah, and then it's that tie. They're also a tie to that. What I talked about at the beginning is, how do you exist? What do you do? What is your battle? What is your struggle? What is your code? And I'm sorry, guys watching this, but God didn't create you to have a family and sit on the couch and play video games, man. Go do something, go live. And like, I think I posted it, I think it was last year, and I think you commented on it actually, but I talked about how I was climbing out of the canyon in the snow with a single 6 revolver on my hip and a tomahawk in my hand and a coyote over my shoulder. And I'm like, I feel sorry for guys who never have to go or never get to go, just kind of be man versus wild. And it's just, it's too bad.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
Yeah, that's. I have to admit, I was a bit jealous when I saw that photo because as I said, I don't get out enough. And the thing is, I'm right by the wilderness here too. It's only a half an hour drive for us. But yeah, that's another story. I think the other side to this, of course, I think is the sacred order of I talked about that Christianity gave to the West. The West was founded on it, built on it, and our rejection of that has really left us quite vulnerable in times of crisis. I also think that. And I include myself in this, I think Western Christianity has become very, very comfortable and comfort-orientated. And that's sort of, we're not very much of a strong counterculture in our culture anymore like we used to be. Like especially if you trade off good, solid liturgical practices and things that give you a sense of who you are outside of the culture of the day and all the fashions and trends, something that's, thousands of years old. I sense even in America now, I see that sort of issue is becoming more and more of a challenge within the church in America, right?
It is, and not just from a liturgical or traditional standpoint with Catholics, which I think has been going on for a while, has been a problem. But I think everybody just wants to be comfortable, and they forget that's not what we were made for. We're not supposed to be comfortable here. You know, we're supposed to suffer. We're gonna suffer. Everybody's gonna suffer. Everyone's gonna suffer. Everyone's gonna have pain. Everybody's gonna die. You know, and nothing was promised to us about it being easy, ever. 11 of the 12 apostles were martyrs. I don't know where people are signing on thinking, well, we're supposed to be comfortable in our Christianity. Church is about being comfortable, and it's not. And I think, again, I would drive, you know, if it's hard to pull that meaning out of scripture for you, then I would recommend like Frankel's book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Great book.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it's the tragic triad, he calls it, of pain, guilt, and death that we all have to face, and we better find meaning in it. And as Christians, we should be the group that has the easiest time finding meaning in those things, because we've already been told, you know, things are going to be hard. You're not going to be comfortable in the world because it's fallen. You know, you're going to experience the pain of growing old. You're going to have to work for your bread. You know, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. But you can be fulfilled, and it's not the end of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. I think I have this theory too that I mean, I don't know. It's something that's come to me of late, but I observe. I think that as we've lost touch with our liturgical traditions, and I include Protestants in this as well, who used to have more of a strong liturgical framework, like those things actually give you a sense of something, like they're like your body and everything is aligned to the sacred, and then that starts to shape your thinking and then your view of the world. And like I know you've got a connection with a local Benedictine monastery, and it's monks and abbots. So that's a sort of a thing that has a long pedigree, and it's about work and about body posture and prayer and regularity of all that sort of stuff. We've become instead, I think, a very me-orientated spirituality and Christianity. You know, what makes me feel good in my spirituality, I'll do what's comfortable, you know?
It's a lack of discipline. That's really, I mean, I think that's what you're describing, you know, that it takes discipline to adhere to those types of things, right? Yeah. And it's easier to go, well, I'd rather just go to church and if I even go anymore, and, you know, kick back and have a cup of coffee and complain that we have to kneel for the communion, for the Eucharistic prayer, you know? I mean, why do we have to do that when that church over there, you know, they have a coffee bar and you can just do whatever you want, and I mean, you know, but it's just there's a lot of lack of discipline, and yeah, I think you could tie that very easily to the argument that part of the cause of that is a lack of or falling away from liturgical stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons for it too. I mean, beyond that, but I just always say to people, even clients that aren't Christian, I can still say to them, I say, you know, nowhere does it say life's supposed to be easy. I don't, you know, and I really like the Stoics, you know, I mean, most of their stuff, I'm not a Stoic per se, because there's some contradictory stuff to Christianity in the Stoics, but the obstacle is the way, you know.
Yeah.
How many people think that way anymore? You know, they're like, oh, there's an obstacle. I guess we're done, or we can't do it, or we have to go around it. It's like, no. If there's an obstacle in front of you, that's the way. That becomes the way. And I think that can be a very Christian mindset as well, right? I mean, we have the God who moves mountains.
Yeah.
So why are we so set back by obstacles?
Well, he's also the God who calls us to the narrow and hard path, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So it's just like, man, I when I can help my clients I call it embrace the suck, you know.
That's the Marines. I mean, that's the jarhead in you, right?
Yeah, it's like, embrace the suck, man. Yeah, this sucks, but really, you're telling me that this is going to be your downfall? You can't handle this? You know, come on. Yeah, you can. You know, and you're only going to come out stronger on the other side of it.
Of course.
And we don't think like that as Christians. At least a lot of Christians don't think that way.
That's beautiful. I promised that we would bookend this conversation with Grace at both ends. So let's wrap up now we'll go back to Grace, because you and your lovely wife have launched this beautiful new initiative called Sacred Heart Ranch. And I want to know, tell us a little bit about what the vision there, what the mission is, and what was it that, how the heck did that come to be?
Well, so let me start with, so most people in America, and I'm, obviously we're talking about things in America here. If something goes wrong when you're a young adult, 18 to 25, maybe you fail out of college or you end up getting out of the military quicker than you thought you would, like me, or whatever, you can go home. It's a luxury that we have that a lot of people don't think about. If you can go home, you can regroup, you can get regain your azimuth and go back out and start again. But that is a luxury. A lot of people don't have that, And so the idea of Sacred Heart Ranch is we're a home to come back to for those that don't have one. Okay. So it's a transitional type housing on a ranch, complete with barn and horses and all that good stuff. For young women ages 18 to 25, and it will serve 5 specific populations, including girls coming out of foster care, girls coming out of dysfunctional homes who don't have a viable option for transitioning kind of into adulthood, girls who are coming out of like state ordered treatment for the Department of Juvenile Corrections, military veteran females who report some form of trauma. And incidentally, 1 in 3 U.S. military female veterans reports military sexual trauma.
Wow.
Which is a staggering statistic. And then our last population would be young women under 25 who are pregnant for the first time and don't have a place to go. All of these populations are extremely high risk for sex trafficking. And sex trafficking is a thing even in Idaho, and it has been a problem for a long time. So that's what it is. That's what Sacred Heart Ranch is. Where the idea came from, I've worked with youth for a long time, and I have always envisioned having some kind of a home, like a home. It's been different things. It was like Pete's Home for Boys, and then it was, St. Benedict's Home for Wayward Children, and there's all these ideas like that, And at one point I wanted to have a St. Benedict's home in southern Idaho and a St. Scholastica home in northern Idaho for girls.
Brother and sister. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I just, and I've worked at a lot of those types of places, and I think I could do it better than a lot of them do that I've worked for. And so I don't mean that arrogantly. I just think I could do a better job than a lot of places. And anyway, so we were talking during the pandemic last year when we were all locked down, and Jamie was like, what are we doing? I mean, are we just gonna start investing more and plan a retirement, or do we have another adventure in us? And I'm like, I just don't ever see myself being retired. And she's like, well, you've always talked about opening a home. Do you still want to try to do that? And I was just like, wow, I haven't thought about that for a while. Because when I got sick, for whatever it was, 1.5 years, which we really didn't talk about here, but I just kind of, a lot of my dreams kind of went away, and I kind of came up with a different set of dreams that I felt I could accomplish. And now that I'm better, I was just like, oh, I hadn't considered that. And so we got to talking, and because it's only been in the last 20 years that we've really begun to understand how much trauma affects the brain and how prevalent it is. It's way more prevalent than what we thought. And I'm like, what about a trauma home? Anyway, so we just started tossing ideas around, and we kind of settled on females for a couple reasons. One, I do a lot of trauma work with female survivors of sexual trauma as a counselor. And I wasn't planning on doing that when I got my social work degree, but I kind of sort of found my way there. And and I've enjoyed doing it, and I've been successful at it. And so, and then the other reason is just because there seem to be more programs available for guys.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, let's help these girls out, and then there have been lots of times that parents and stuff that I've known who's I worked with kids and stuff. They've said, Pete, you're the dad every girl needs.
Yeah, awesome. I'd endorse that.
And I'm like, that's a compliment. I'll take that.
Yeah.
And so we kind of settled on females, and that's kind of where we're at. We've been raising money. There's a website that you can put in the whatever the comments or whatever, and people can see our website.
Tell us how do people find that website, mate?
Oh, it's real easy. It's www.sacredheartranch.org. O-R-G.
Yeah.
And there's everything you could ever want to know about what we're trying to do on that website. There's news, there's a promotional video, there's a description of the activities available at the ranch, there's the populations we serve, there's our board members. I mean, everything you want to know is on that website. And if you're interested in supporting us in some way, especially monetarily, we are in the fundraising stage, which is painful. But it's there's information on how to donate there as well. A lot of people ask if it's going to be faith-based, and the answer is yes and no. The reason we're doing it is faith-based. The programming there is going to be pretty neutral, but we will certainly encourage girls to participate in services of their choosing, and we will have a designated chaplain who will be a Catholic priest for Sacred Heart Ranch. And certainly we will encourage virtues like the Golden Rule and faith, hope, and love, and stuff like that. We plan to have a Marian grotto in the garden, and things like that. So there certainly won't be any secret that Jamie and I are Catholic, but it's open to women of all faiths or no faiths, and so
that traditional Christian model of just caring for those who are the most vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome, mate. Tell me, just to wrap things up with, how do people follow you? Because I know you've got a YouTube channel. I love watching your videos, just hunting and trapping videos, right? And it's great. It reminds me of how much I'm locked down here in New Zealand, actually. But gosh, it's great. How do people follow you if they want to keep up with you?
Okay, I do have a YouTube channel. Don't follow me if you're gonna get mad at what I'm doing. I delete those people pretty quick because I'm not in there to argue. I started a YouTube channel to help people who were getting into trapping or hunting predators because I had a mentor help me do that. My dad was a big time hunter, but he was not a trapper or a predator hunter. So someone taught me, and I'm like, man, nowadays everything's on YouTube. So I wanted to kind of do videos to help beginners get started at stuff. And I don't know how successful I've been with my videos. I watch them and I'm like, oh, I forgot to mention this, or anyway. But I do have a YouTube channel. I think it's just under my name, JP Espil, I think, or Jean-Pierre Espil. And you can search it up on YouTube. I think some of the tags are Idaho trapping, Idaho Basque, Long Spring trapping. Those are some of the things that you could search for and bring up my videos. I haven't done any new videos lately, but it's summer over here, so there's not much going on. I'll start in about 5 weeks. I'll be laying coyote traps out, and I'll start shooting some more videos again. But it's been fun doing that. But
brother, I'll tell you, I enjoy them. It's just, I don't know, maybe I'm too much of a voyeur, but I love practical sort of skills based stuff, that and my boy and I actually often we sit down now and he'll say, Dad, can we watch? There's a guy in Canada who makes videos of like wild camping effectively. He'll go out in the snow and he'll just take his bivy bag, his tarp with him, and that's it. And or a canoe, for example, and we just 40 minutes of it. And it's great. We love it, So.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I wish I could do more of that kind of stuff. But Jamie seems to want me to come home at night. I'll tell you one more quick story if I can.
Of course you can, mate.
All right, so the big battle with Jamie and I is always that I'm never back when I say I'm going to be back. And so she's always worried about me, and I'm usually by myself. So, and granted, there's times I'm in places that are dangerous and stuff like that. And there's a lot of things I don't tell her that happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know that. I know that. I know how that works, mate.
yeah,
How was your hunting trip? It was good, safe.
oh, that's good. Yeah, pretty boring, nothing major. She's like, "What happened to your pants?" Oh, what do you mean? You're not wearing any? Oh, well, anyway. So, so last year I was trapping for a rancher. I was trapping coyotes for a rancher to keep his calf depredation down, and he has a whole bunch of property, and one of the properties he has is this huge drainage in the mountains, and I'm like, oh man, that's got to be full of bobcats. So bobcats are this really cool critter we have over here. Really pretty. They sell for a lot of money too. Anyway, I've never been much of a bobcat trapper, but I'm like, I'm going to set some bobcat traps up there. And then he told me, he goes, Pete, there's mountain lions. There's a lot of mountain lions in there too, and I'm sorry, I'm not worried. I carry my pistol and whatever. Well, so I went and got a mountain lion tag. You have to have a mountain lion tag in Idaho if you're going to shoot a mountain lion. And I had it so when I started trapping bobcats in December and January, I would have my lion tag in case I ran into a lion. Well, it's the first week of November, and I'm nowhere near this place, and I'm walking through this rangeland along this wash through the desert, checking coyote traps, and I look to the trail in front of me, and 10 yards in front of me is a mountain lion.
Wow.
And I was walking into the wind, so they couldn't smell me, and I'm pretty quiet, so they didn't hear me, but 10 yards right there, mountain lion.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was a female, but anyway, she's standing there, and I'm like, I didn't want to shoot her because I'm like, I wanted to try to get a big tom mountain lion. She was a good sized female, but I was like, what's she going to do? She's probably going to turn and run, Yeah. And so I reached back to my revolver, and I had my hand on it, and I'm looking at her, and like, is she going to run? And she crouches down to pounce.
Oh no.
So she's 10 yards. I mean, a mountain lion can cover that in like 1 second, so I'm like, all right, we're doing this, and so I drew my pistol and shot her right, one shot, one kill.
And it's a revolver, right?
Yeah, it's an old Ruger single 6, 22.
So it's a fair fight. Right, it's a fair fight. Look, that's a bit of bone handle and everything. That's a fair fight, folks.
So she goes down, right? I'm like, okay, well, so I left her there for a minute, went and checked my traps, came back, and it's like, it's like 2:00, and I told Jamie I was going to be home by like 2:30, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I don't have my cell phone with me. My Jeep was a ways away, so I'm like, well, I got to skin this mountain lion. So I skin the mountain lion. It takes me a while to get it skinned, and I get the pelt wrapped up and thrown in my pack. And I make my way back to the Jeep. There's a couple snares I had to check right near there, and then I get to the Jeep and I call Jamie, and by then it's like 4:30, and she's like, where are you? And I'm like, look, she goes, look, unless you almost died, I don't even want to hear your excuse. And I'm like, do I tell her? And so I tell her, well, I came face to face with a mountain lion, and she's like, oh my gosh. And she's like, what happened? I go, well, I told her, and I shot her. She goes, and then here's Jamie. She goes, it was a female? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, did it have kittens? I'm like, no. And by the way, I'm okay too,
And that is the difference between men and women in one instance right there.
Yeah. So it's cool doing this kind of stuff because you never know what's going to happen, and I love it.
That is awesome, mate. On that happy note, Pete, thank you so much. It's been a real blessing to have this conversation. And I've really, really enjoyed it. So thank you, my friend, for taking the time. It's been a real blessing. Thank you.
And it's good to see you again, too. It's been a long time.
Thanks, brother.
All right, we'll see you.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side, our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.